Dr. Leonard Mason stood at the precipice of madness, his once steady hands trembling as he penned what he feared might be his final journal entry. The flickering light of his lantern cast grotesque shadows on the cavern walls, each dancing silhouette a mockery of the horrors that lurked in the unfathomable darkness beyond. How long had it been since they had first descended into this accursed place? Days? Weeks? Time had lost all meaning in this realm of eternal twilight. With a shaky breath, he began to write, desperate to leave some record of their ill-fated expedition, should anyone ever find it. To whomever may discover this journal, I implore you to heed its warning. Turn back now, seal this entrance, and let the secrets of the hollow earth remain buried for eternity. For in our hubris, we have awakened something that should have remained in slumber, an ancient evil that now threatens not just our lives, but the very fabric of reality as we know it. It began, as many tales of horror do, with an insatiable curiosity and the arrogance of those who believe themselves to be the masters of nature's mysteries. I, Dr. Leonard Mason, once a respected geologist and skeptic of all tales of the fantastic, now write these words as a man humbled and terrified by the truths I have uncovered. Our expedition into the depths of the earth was meant to be my crowning achievement, the final nail in the coffin of hollow earth theories. Instead, it has become, but I must start from the beginning, for only in the full telling can the true horror of our situation be understood. The story of their descent into madness had begun months earlier, in the hallowed halls of Miskatonic University. Dr. Mason had been presenting his latest paper debunking yet another hollow earth claim when a colleague approached him with news that would change the course of his life, and perhaps the fate of the world. "Leonard, you must see this," Professor Eleanor Brandt had said, her eyes gleaming with an excitement that bordered on mania. She thrust a set of ancient parchments into his hands, their edges crumbling with age. These were discovered in a hidden chamber beneath an Incan temple. The symbols, the calculations, they're unlike anything I've ever seen. Mason had scoffed initially, his skepticism as deeply ingrained as the lines on his weathered face. But as he studied the documents, a chill ran down his spine. The maps and diagrams depicted a world beneath their feet, vast caverns and tunnels stretching for thousands of miles. What disturbed him most were not the fantastical claims, but the precision of the measurements, the advanced mathematical notations that seemed centuries ahead of their supposed time of creation. "This is preposterous, Eleanor," he had muttered. But even as the words left his lips, a seed of doubt had taken root in his mind. "Is it, Leonard? You've spent your career disproving these theories, but what if, just what if, there's a kernel of truth buried beneath all the myths and legends?" Eleanor's voice dropped to a whisper, her eyes darting around as if afraid of being overheard. "There's more. The parchments speak of an entrance, a gateway hidden in the mountains of Antarctica. We could be the ones to find it, to prove or disprove this theory once and for all." Mason had wanted to dismiss her claims, to retreat to the comfort of his rational, scientific worldview. But the allure of discovery, the chance to etch his name in the annals of history, proved too strong to resist. Within weeks, he found himself assembling a team for what he convinced the university would be a routine geological survey of the Antarctic region. The expedition team was a mix of skeptics and believers, each chosen for their expertise and their willingness to venture into one of the most inhospitable regions on Earth. Alongside Mason and Eleanor were Dr. Marcus Blackwood, a brilliant physicist with a penchant for fringe theories, Sarah Chen, a young climatologist whose innovative equipment would be crucial for their survival, and Captain Elias Crow, a grizzled explorer whose knowledge of Antarctic terrain was unparalleled. As their ship cut through the icy waters of the Southern Ocean, Mason found himself increasingly consumed by the ancient maps. He pored over them night after night, his initial skepticism giving way to a growing obsession. The precision of the calculations, the strange symbols that hinted at a language older than any known to modern linguistics, all of it pointed to a mystery far deeper than he had ever imagined. It was during one of these late-night study sessions that Captain Crow approached him, his face grave in the dim light of the ship's cabin. "Dr. Mason," he began, his voice low and rough, "I've sailed these waters for decades and I've heard tales, whispers from the few native tribes that still cling to the edges of this frozen continent. They speak of a place where the ice never melts, where the very air seems to resist human presence. They call it the doorway to the hollow world. Mason had looked up sharply, his interest piqued. "And you believe these tales, Captain?" Crow's weathered face had creased with a mirthless smile. "Believe? No, Doctor. But I've seen things in my travels, things that defy explanation. All I'm saying is, be prepared for the possibility that we might find more than just rocks and ice out there." The warning had sent a shiver through Mason, but he dismissed it as superstition. He was a man of science, after all. Whatever they found, it would have a rational explanation. How wrong he had been. Their expedition had landed on the Antarctic coast in early November, taking advantage of the Austral summer's constant daylight. For weeks they had trekked across the desolate landscape, their instruments searching for any anomaly that might corroborate the ancient maps. The bitter cold and howling winds tested their resolve, but it was the growing sense of unease, the feeling of being watched by unseen eyes, that began to fray the edges of their sanity. It was Sarah who first noticed the discrepancies in their measurements. "The magnetic readings are off," she had reported one evening, her brow furrowed in confusion. "It's as if there's a massive void beneath us, distorting the Earth's natural field." Mason had dismissed her concerns at first, attributing the anomalies to equipment malfunction. But as they pushed further inland, following the cryptic directions of the ancient parchments, the irregularities became impossible to ignore. Compasses spun wildly, electronic equipment failed without explanation, and the very air seemed to thicken with an oppressive, otherworldly presence. It was on the 32nd day of their expedition, as they scaled a towering glacial formation, that they made the discovery that would seal their fate. Blackwood, who had been taking samples of the ice, let out a startled cry. "Look at this. The ice, it's not natural, it's carved." The team had gathered around, their breath forming clouds in the frigid air. As they chipped away at the glacier's face, an impossible sight revealed itself. Smooth, polished stone, adorned with alien glyphs that pulsed with a faint, sickly light. "It's a door," Eleanor had whispered, her voice a mix of awe and terror. "The entrance spoken of in the parchments. We found it." As if in response to her words, a low rumble had emanated from deep within the ice. The ground beneath their feet had shifted, and before they could react, the facade of the glacier had split open, revealing a yawning chasm that plunged into unfathomable darkness. The team had stood transfixed, their scientific skepticism warring with the primal fear that gripped their hearts. It was Mason who had broken the spell, his voice quavering but resolute. "We came here for answers," he had said, switching on his headlamp, "and by God, we're going to find them." With those fateful words, they had begun their descent into the hollow earth, leaving behind the last vestiges of the world they knew. The passage had twisted and turned, leading them ever deeper into the planet's core. The walls of the tunnel were smooth and unnaturally warm to the touch, covered in the same pulsing glyphs they had seen on the entrance. As they descended, the laws of nature seemed to unravel around them. Gravity fluctuated wildly, at times making them feel weightless, at others threatening to crush them against the tunnel floor. The air grew thick and humid, filled with spores that glowed with an eerie bioluminescence. It was Eleanor who first began to decipher the meanings hidden in the glyphs. "They're a warning," she had said, her voice hushed with dread. "They speak of ancient beings, of a civilization that retreated into the Earth's core eons ago. But there's something else. A presence they feared, something they sought to contain." Mason had wanted to dismiss her translations as fantasy, but the deeper they went, the more he felt the weight of an alien intelligence pressing against his mind. Strange whispers echoed in the darkness, just beyond the range of comprehension. More than once, he caught glimpses of shapeless forms slithering at the edge of his vision, only to disappear when he turned to look. The team's cohesion began to fray as the descent continued. Blackwood became increasingly paranoid, muttering about cosmic rays and interdimensional beings that were trying to possess their minds. Sarah withdrew into herself, her eyes wide and unfocused, as if seeing horrors invisible to the others. Even the stalwart Captain Crow showed signs of strain, his hands shaking as he checked and rechecked their dwindling supplies. It was impossible to say how long they had been underground when they finally emerged into a vast cavern that defied all logic and reason. An inverted world stretched out before them, with a distant ceiling that pulsed with a sickly organic light. Colossal structures of impossible geometry dotted the landscape, their surfaces writhing as if alive. Rivers of luminescent liquid flowed upwards, defying gravity, while strange, amorphous creatures flitted through the air. My God, Mason had breathed, his scientific mind reeling at the sight. It's real, the hollow earth, it's all real. But their awe quickly turned to horror as they realized the true nature of their discovery. This was no lost world waiting to be explored and catalogued. It was a prison, a containment zone for beings and knowledge so alien and terrible that they threatened the very fabric of reality. As they had ventured further into this nightmare realm, they encountered the remnants of the civilization Eleanor had spoken of. Mummified corpses of creatures that were vaguely humanoid, but grotesquely elongated and misshapen. Libraries filled with books made of materials that seemed to shift and change as they were observed. And always, the sensation of being watched, studied, and judged by an intelligence so vast and alien that it defied comprehension. It was in one of these ancient libraries that they found the tome that revealed the true horror of their situation. Eleanor, her hands shaking, had translated the text, her voice growing more frantic with each word. "They came here to hide," she had said, her eyes wild with terror and a terrible understanding. "The beings we've seen, the civilization that built this place, they weren't containment. They were refugees, fleeing from something even worse. Something that slumbers in the deepest pit of this hollow world." As if summoned by her words, a tremor had run through the cavern. In the distance, something vast and unknowable began to stir. Now, as Dr. Leonard Mason penned what he feared would be his final words, he could hear the approaching doom. The walls of the cavern pulsed with increasing intensity, and the air itself seemed to vibrate with a frequency that set his teeth on edge. His companions were scattered, lost in the twisting corridors of this nightmare realm or driven to madness by what they had witnessed. He knew now the terrible truth. Their expedition had not been a journey of discovery, but an awakening. In their arrogance, they had disturbed the slumber of beings so ancient and powerful that their mere existence threatened to unravel the laws of nature. As he wrote the final lines in his journal, Mason could hear the screams of his colleagues echoing in the distance, mingling with the sound of something massive approaching, something that should never have been awakened. "To whoever finds this record, I beg you, seal this entrance, bury it beneath tons of rock and ice, for in our hubris, we have doomed not just ourselves, but potentially all of humanity. The hollow earth is real, but it is not a place of wonder and discovery. It is a prison, a containment for horrors beyond imagining. And we, God help us, have just turned the key." The ground beneath him heaved, and Mason knew his time had run out. As he sealed his journal in a waterproof case, he caught a glimpse of something moving in the shadows, a mass of writhing tentacles and eyes that seemed to peer into his very soul. With a final, desperate prayer to a God he no longer believed could hear him, Dr. Leonard Mason prepared to face the consequences of mankind's insatiable curiosity. The true horrors of the hollow earth were about to be unleashed, and the surface world would never be the same again. The suffocating darkness seemed to pulse with malevolent life as Dr. Leonard Mason stumbled through the twisted corridors of the hollow earth. His once pristine expedition uniform hung in tatters, caked with an ichorous substance that defied classification. The beam of his failing headlamp cut through the gloom, revealing glimpses of impossible geometries that hurt the eye to behold. How long had it been since he had sealed his journal and fled from the approaching horror? Hours? Days? Time had become as warped and meaningless as the laws of physics in this nightmarish realm. The screams of his colleagues still echoed in his mind, their faces contorted in terror as they were dragged into the shadows by things that should not exist. Mason's scientific mind, once his greatest asset, now threatened to shatter under the weight of the eldritch truths he had uncovered. Yet some primal instinct for survival drove him onward, even as he felt his sanity slipping away with each step. As he rounded a corner, he collided with a figure emerging from the darkness. He recoiled, expecting another monstrosity, only to find himself face to face with Eleanor Brandt. Her once immaculate appearance was a distant memory. Her hair hung in matted clumps, and her eyes held a wild, haunted look. "Leonard," she gasped, clutching at his arms with desperate strength. "You're alive! I thought they had taken everyone." Mason embraced her, feeling a surge of relief at finding another human in this inhuman place. "Eleanor, thank God, what happened? Where are the others?" Her face crumpled and she shook her head. "Gone. All gone. I saw things take them. Blackwood, he went mad, started babbling about cosmic harmonies and tried to offer himself to those things. And Sarah, oh God, Sarah." Her voice trailed off into a choked sob. Mason felt a cold dread settle in the pit of his stomach. "And Captain Crow?" Eleanor's eyes went wide, a look of terror crossing her face. "Crow? He's changed, Leonard. I saw him last in one of the ancient chambers. He was communing with something vast and terrible. I don't think he's human anymore." Before Mason could respond, a low, reverberating sound echoed through the cavern. It was not quite a roar, not quite a scream, but something in between. A sound that no earthly creature could produce. The very air seemed to vibrate with its power. "We have to move," Mason said urgently, pulling Eleanor along. "There's got to be a way out of here, back to the surface." As they hurried through the twisting passages, Mason filled Eleanor in on what he had discovered in the ancient library. The hollow earth, it seemed, was not just a hidden world but a cosmic prison, a place where reality itself had been warped to contain beings of unimaginable power and malevolence. The civilization that built this place, he explained as they navigated the alien terrain. They weren't the jailers. They were refugees, fleeing from something even worse. And now, because of us, because of our damned curiosity, that something is waking up. Eleanor nodded grimly. "I've translated more of the glyphs," she said. "They speak of a war, eons ago, between cosmic entities that shaped the very fabric of the universe. The losing side was imprisoned here, in the hollow earth, sealed away by forces beyond our comprehension." Their conversation was cut short as they entered a vast chamber unlike anything they had encountered before. The ceiling arched impossibly high, lost in a swirling miasma of bioluminescent gases. Colossal pillars, their surfaces crawling with indecipherable symbols, supported structures that seemed to fold in on themselves in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. But it was what lay at the center of the chamber that stopped them in their tracks. A pit, vast and bottomless, pulsed with an otherworldly energy. Tendrils of darkness writhed at its edges, reaching out as if searching for prey. And there, at the edge of the abyss, stood a figure they both recognized. "Crow," Mason whispered, his voice a mixture of relief and dread. The captain turned at the sound, and both Mason and Eleanor recoiled in horror. Crow's face was a mask of ecstasy and madness, his eyes glowing with an inner light that was decidedly not human. When he spoke, his voice resonated with harmonics that set Mason's teeth on edge. "Ah, my friends," Crow said, spreading his arms wide. "You've arrived just in time for the awakening. Isn't it glorious?" Mason took a cautious step forward. "Crow, what have you done? What's happening to you?" The thing that had once been Captain Elias Crow laughed, a sound that echoed with the screams of 1,000 tormented souls. "Done? I've embraced our true destiny, Mason. The beings here, they've shown me the truth. We are but motes of dust in a cosmic wind, and now I will become the hurricane." As Crow spoke, the pit behind him pulsed with increasing intensity. Something was rising from its depths, something vast and ancient and filled with an insatiable hunger. Eleanor grabbed Mason's arm, her nails digging into his flesh. "We have to stop this," she hissed. "If that thing fully awakens, it won't just be us or the expedition at risk. The entire world could be in danger." Mason nodded, his mind racing. He recalled the ancient texts, the warnings left behind by the long-dead civilization. There had to be a way to reseal the prison, to undo the damage they had unwittingly caused. "The symbols," he muttered, his eyes darting around the chamber. "The pillars, the architecture, it's all part of the containment system. If we can decode it, maybe we can reactivate it." But even as he spoke, Crow's transformation accelerated. His body began to elongate, his skin taking on a shimmering, otherworldly quality. Tentacles erupted from his back, writhing with a life of their own. "You cannot stop what has already begun," Crow's voice boomed, now layered with inhuman overtones. "The old ones will rise again, and this pitiful world will be remade in their image." Mason and Eleanor split up, each racing to opposite sides of the chamber. They began frantically studying the symbols on the pillars, trying to decipher their meaning before it was too late. The air crackled with eldritch energy, and the ground beneath their feet trembled with increasing violence. As Mason ran his hands over the alien glyphs, he felt a jolt of recognition. The symbols were not just writing. They were equations, mathematical formulas of mind-bending complexity that described the very fabric of reality. "Eleanor," he shouted over the rising cacophony. "It's a lock, a multi-dimensional lock. We need to solve the equations to reseal the prison." Eleanor's eyes lit up with understanding. Of course. The refugee civilization, they must have used their advanced knowledge to create a containment field powered by the fundamental forces of the universe itself. Together they raced from pillar to pillar, their minds working in tandem to unravel the cosmic riddle before them. Years of scientific training collided with eldritch knowledge as they pieced together the solution. But they were not working unopposed. The transformed Crow, now more tentacle than man, lashed out at them with appendages that defied the laws of physics. Mason barely dodged a strike that left a smoldering crater in the stone floor. "You cannot hope to comprehend the forces you are dealing with," Crow's voice thundered. "Submit to the inevitable. Embrace the coming chaos." Mason ignored the taunts, focusing all his mental energy on the problem at hand. Numbers and symbols danced before his eyes, slowly resolving into a pattern that his overtaxed mind could barely grasp. "Eleanor," he called out, "I think I've got it. We need to—" His words were cut short as a tentacle wrapped around his ankle, yanking him off his feet. He hit the ground hard, the wind knocked from his lungs. Through blurring vision, he saw Crow looming over him, a mass of writhing flesh and glowing eyes. "Foolish insect," Crow hissed. "Did you think you could undo the work of gods?" Just as Mason felt consciousness slipping away, a piercing shriek filled the air. Eleanor stood atop one of the pillars, her hands pressed against a pulsing glyph. The chamber shuddered, and a wave of energy rippled outward from her position. "Leonard," she cried, "the final sequence, input it now." With the last of his strength, Mason dragged himself to the nearest pillar. His fingers, slick with blood and ichor, danced across the symbols. As he input the final glyph, a blinding light erupted from every surface of the chamber. The transformed Crow let out a howl of rage and pain, his tentacles flailing wildly. "No, you cannot. The awakening. It cannot be stopped." But it was too late. The pillars began to hum with power, creating a harmonious frequency that resonated through Mason's very bones. The pit at the center of the chamber pulsed once, twice, and then began to close in on itself, reality warping and twisting as the cosmic lock reasserted itself. Crow's monstrous form began to disintegrate, pulled apart by forces beyond human comprehension. His final scream was lost in the deafening roar of collapsing spacetime. As suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The chamber fell silent, the eldritch energies contained once more behind barriers of impossible mathematics. Mason lay on the cool stone floor, every nerve in his body singing with pain and exhaustion. Eleanor stumbled to his side, collapsing next to him. Her face was streaked with tears and grime, but her eyes shone with a mixture of relief and lingering terror. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." Mason nodded weakly, unable to find words to express the magnitude of what they had just experienced. They had stared into the face of cosmic horror, and against all odds, emerged victorious. But at what cost? As the adrenaline faded, the full weight of their situation settled upon them. They were still trapped in the hollow earth, surrounded by the remnants of an alien civilization and horrors beyond imagination. Their team was gone, their supplies dwindling, and the way back to the surface was far from certain. "What now?" Eleanor asked, her voice small in the vast echoing chamber. Mason struggled to his feet, offering her a hand. "We find a way out," he said with a determination he didn't entirely feel. "We have to warn the world about what's down here. Make sure no one ever tries to unlock this prison again." As they made their way out of the chamber, Mason couldn't shake the feeling that their ordeal was far from over. They had won a battle, but the war against the cosmic horrors of the hollow earth had only just begun. Their journey through the twisted landscapes of the underworld was a nightmare of endurance and willpower. Each step was a battle against exhaustion, hunger, and the ever-present threat of madness. The hollow earth seemed to resist their every move, as if the very environment was alive and malevolent. They traversed vast caverns where gravity fluctuated wildly, forcing them to climb along walls and ceilings. Forests of alien fungi towered above them, releasing spores that induced vivid, terrifying hallucinations. Rivers of glowing liquid flowed uphill, their surfaces rippling with shapes that vanished when looked at directly. Throughout their arduous trek, Mason and Eleanor clung to each other both physically and mentally. They took turns sleeping, always with one keeping watch for the nameless horrors that lurked in the shadows. In quiet moments, they shared what they had learned, piecing together the cosmic history that had led to the creation of this underground prison. "The beings imprisoned here," Eleanor explained during one rest period, her voice hoarse from thirst, "they're not just powerful, they're fundamental, like living embodiments of chaos and entropy. The civilization that sealed them away, they must have realized that these entities threatened the very stability of our universe." Mason nodded, his mind struggling to encompass the scale of what they were dealing with. "And now we're the wardens," he said grimly, "keeping the secret, making sure no one else stumbles upon this place." As they delved deeper into the hollow earth's mysteries, they discovered remnants of the refugee civilization's last stand. Abandoned cities of impossible architecture stretched for miles, their streets littered with the fossilized remains of beings that defied classification. Libraries filled with books made of materials that shifted and changed as they were read, containing knowledge that simultaneously expanded and shattered their understanding of reality. But it was in one of these alien archives that they found their first glimmer of hope. Eleanor, poring over a tome that seemed to be written in pure mathematics, let out a gasp of excitement. "Leonard, look at this," she exclaimed, pointing to a series of diagrams that hurt the eye to behold. I think this is a map of the hollow earth, showing all the entry and exit points." Mason studied the impossible geometry of the diagrams, his scientifically trained mind struggling to make sense of the multidimensional representations. Slowly, a pattern emerged from the chaos. "You're right," he breathed, a spark of hope igniting in his chest. "And look here. This point corresponds to where we entered. If we can decipher this, we might be able to find a way back to the surface." Their renewed sense of purpose was short-lived, however. As they prepared to leave the archive, a low, reverberating sound echoed through the caverns. It was a sound they had hoped never to hear again, the awakening of something vast and ancient and hungry. "Impossible," Mason whispered, his face pale with dread. "We sealed the prison. How can they be stirring again?" Eleanor's eyes widened with sudden understanding. "The map," she said urgently. "It's not just showing entry points, it's showing weak spots in the dimensional barriers, places where the old ones might be able to influence our world, even if they can't fully manifest." The implications were staggering. Even with the main prison resealed, the hollow earth was riddled with points where the cosmic horrors could reach out, potentially driving humans on the surface to madness, or influencing events to work towards their eventual release. As if to confirm their fears, the very air around them seemed to thicken, taking on a shimmering quality that hurt to look at directly. Shadows deepened and writhed, and whispers in an impossible language tickled at the edges of their consciousness. "We have to move," Mason said, grabbing Eleanor's hand. "We need to get to the surface and warn someone, anyone, about what's down here." They ran through the twisting corridors of the archive, the eldritch tome clutched tightly in Eleanor's arms. Behind them, the sounds of pursuit grew louder, wet, slithering noises accompanied by a cacophony of inhuman shrieks and roars. As they emerged into a vast cavern, they skidded to a halt at the edge of a precipice. Before them stretched a chasm so wide and deep that the other side was lost in darkness. Far below, something massive moved through phosphorescent mists, its true shape mercifully hidden from view. "There!" Eleanor pointed to a narrow bridge that spanned the abyss. It was made of the same shifted reality as the rest of the hollow earth, seeming to fold in on itself in ways that defied Euclidean geometry. They had no choice. With the sounds of pursuit growing ever closer, Mason and Eleanor stepped onto the impossible bridge. Each step was an exercise in mind-bending logic as the path twisted and reconfigured itself beneath their feet. Halfway across, disaster struck. A tentacle vast beyond imagining rose from the depths below. It struck the bridge with cosmic force, shattering reality itself. Mason felt the structure give way beneath him, and suddenly he was falling, tumbling through fractured dimensions. "Eleanor!" he screamed, reaching out desperately. Their fingers brushed for a moment, and then she was gone, swallowed by a rift in space-time. Mason fell for what seemed like an eternity, passing through layers of reality that no human mind was meant to comprehend. He saw glimpses of other worlds, other times, other possibilities, each more terrifying and alien than the last. When he finally came to rest, he found himself in a place that defied description. It was as if he had landed in the gap between moments, a place where time and space had no meaning. And there, waiting for him, was a presence so vast and alien that his mind recoiled from its enormity. "You who have trespassed," the presence seemed to say, though no words were spoken. The concept simply appeared in Mason's mind, vast and terrible. "Know now the truth of your insignificance." Dr. Leonard Mason, once a pillar of scientific rationality, now floated in a non-space beyond human comprehension. His body, if he still possessed such a thing, felt both infinitely large and infinitesimally small. Time stretched and compressed around him, moments lasting eons, centuries passing in the blink of an eye. Before him, or perhaps within him, the presence continued to communicate. Images and concepts flooded Mason's consciousness, threatening to overwhelm his sanity. He saw the birth of universes, the death of realities. He witnessed cosmic wars fought with weapons that reshaped the fabric of existence. And through it all, he sensed the inexorable presence of the old ones, being so vast and alien that their very existence warped the laws of physics. "Your kind," the presence continued, "are but motes of dust in the cosmic wind, yet you have stirred that which should remain still. The seals weaken, the prison falters, and we remember what it is to hunger." Mason struggled to maintain his sense of self against the onslaught of cosmic revelations. He thought of Eleanor, lost somewhere in the twisted realms of the hollow earth. He thought of their team, of the surface world blissfully unaware of the horrors that lurked beneath their feet. With supreme effort, he forced his mind to focus, to push back against the overwhelming presence. What are you?" he managed to think, his mental voice a mere whisper in the vastness. "We are the Watchers," came the reply. "The jailers and the jailed. We are the barrier between your reality and the chaos that would unmake it." Images flashed through Mason's mind. Beings of pure energy constructing the hollow earth, weaving reality itself into a prison for entities beyond mortal comprehension. He saw the refugee civilization, fleeing from cosmic horrors, finding sanctuary in this manufactured realm. And he saw how, over eons, the lines between jailer and prisoner had blurred, creating the nightmarish landscape he and his team had stumbled into. "The seal," Mason thought desperately. "We reactivated it, isn't that enough?" A sensation that might have been laughter rippled through the non-space. "A temporary measure," the presence replied. "The old ones stir, the barriers thin. Your actions have set in motion events that cannot be undone." Terror gripped Mason as he realized the full implications of what the presence was saying. Their expedition, driven by scientific curiosity, had been the catalyst for something far worse than they could have imagined. They had not just discovered the hollow earth. They had begun the process of unraveling the very fabric of reality. "There must be a way to stop it," Mason pleaded, his thoughts tinged with desperation. "Tell me how to reinforce the seals, how to prevent the old ones from breaking free." The presence seemed to consider his words, its vast attention focused on Mason's insignificant being. "There is a possibility," it finally responded. "But the cost would be great. Are you willing to pay it, little mote?" Before Mason could respond, he felt reality shift around him. The non-space dissolved, and he found himself back in his physical body, lying on a cold stone floor. Every nerve ending screamed in agony as normal sensory input reasserted itself. He gasped, drawing in lungfuls of the heavy, humid air of the hollow earth. "Leonard, oh, thank God!" Eleanor's voice cut through the fog of pain and disorientation. Mason felt her hands on his shoulders, helping him to sit up. As his vision cleared, he saw that they were in yet another vast chamber, this one dominated by a massive crystalline structure that pulsed with otherworldly energy. "Eleanor," he croaked, his throat dry and raw. How did we get here?" She shook her head, her eyes wide with a mixture of relief and lingering terror. "I don't know. One moment I was falling through I don't know what. The next I was here, and then you appeared just lying there. Leonard, what happened to you? You were gone for hours." Mason's mind reeled as he tried to reconcile his experience of cosmic timelessness with Eleanor's account. Hours. It felt like an eternity, and no time at all. He struggled to his feet, leaning heavily on Eleanor for support. I spoke with something. One of the Watchers, it called itself. As Mason recounted his experience, Eleanor's expression grew increasingly grave. She filled him in on her own journey through the twisted realms of the hollow earth, how she had fought off maddening visions and narrowly escaped capture by things that defied description. "But look," she said, gesturing to the crystalline structure that dominated the chamber. "I think this is what we've been looking for. Some kind of central control mechanism for the entire hollow earth system." Mason studied the pulsing crystal, his scientific mind struggling to make sense of its impossible geometry. "The Watcher," he murmured. "It said there might be a way to reinforce the seals, to prevent the old ones from breaking free, but at a great cost." Eleanor's face set in a determined expression. "Whatever the cost, we have to try. The fate of our entire reality might be at stake." As if in response to their words, the crystal flared with blinding intensity. Symbols and equations began to scroll across its faceted surface, a cascade of information that threatened to overwhelm their human senses. Mason and Eleanor worked feverishly to decipher the data, their minds pushed to the limits of comprehension. Hours blended together as they unraveled the cosmic mathematics that underpinned the very fabric of the hollow earth. "It's a key," Eleanor finally said, her voice filled with awe and trepidation. "A key to rewrite the fundamental laws of this place, to strengthen the barriers between dimensions and reinforce the prison of the old ones." Mason nodded grimly. "But look at the energy requirements, the sacrifice it demands. Whoever activates this, they'll be written out of existence. Not just died, but erased from the timeline entirely, as if they never were." The implications hung heavy in the air between them. To save reality, one of them would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. To be forgotten, to have never been. Before they could discuss further, a bone-chilling howl echoed through the chamber. The air itself seemed to ripple and tear, revealing glimpses of nightmarish realms beyond. Tentacles of pure darkness began to seep through the growing rifts, reaching hungrily towards the two humans. "They're breaking through," Eleanor cried, backing away from the encroaching horrors. "We're out of time." Mason's mind raced, weighing the options before them. In that moment, he knew what he had to do. "Eleanor," he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. "You have to be the one to make it out, to warn the world about what's down here." Eleanor's eyes widened as she realized what he was suggesting. "No, Leonard, there has to be another way." But Mason was already moving towards the crystal, his hands hovering over the pulsing surface. "There isn't time. You're the archaeologist, the linguist. You have the best chance of making people believe, of preventing anyone else from ever finding this place." He managed a small, sad smile. "Besides, I'm the expedition leader. This is my responsibility." Tears streamed down Eleanor's face as she recognized the truth in his words. "Leonard, I'll find a way to remember you. Somehow." Mason shook his head. "No, you won't. That's the point. But you'll live, and our world will continue. That's what matters." With a deep breath, he pressed his palms against the crystal. "Now go. Find the way out. Warn them all. As Eleanor turned to flee, casting one last anguished look over her shoulder, Mason began the process of activating the cosmic key. Energy surged through him, every atom of his being becoming a conduit for forces beyond human comprehension. He saw the history of the universe unfold before him, the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of stars. He witnessed the old ones in all their terrifying glory, and understood at last the true nature of the hollow earth and its role in the cosmic balance. As his consciousness expanded to encompass realities beyond number, Dr. Leonard Mason made his final, heroic choice. With a thought that resonated across dimensions, he rewrote the fundamental laws of the hollow earth. The barriers between worlds strengthened, the seals reinforced with the very essence of his being. In his last moments of existence, Mason saw Eleanor reaching the surface, emerging into the harsh Antarctic sunlight. He saw her warning the world, her story disbelieved by many but heeded by enough to ensure the hollow earth remained hidden. He saw a future where humanity continued, blissfully unaware of how close they had come to cosmic annihilation. And then, with a final surge of energy, Dr. Leonard Mason was gone, not dead but erased. The timeline rewritten so that he had never been born, never led the expedition, never sacrificed himself to save reality. The crystal pulsed one final time and then went dark. In the world above, Eleanor Brandt stumbled out of a cave in the Antarctic wilderness, her mind reeling from horrors she could barely comprehend. She knew she had to warn the world, to prevent anyone else from discovering the nightmarish realm that lay beneath their feet. But as she looked back at the seamless ice wall that had sealed itself behind her, she felt a strange sense of loss, as if she had forgotten something vitally important. For a moment, she thought she saw a man's face reflected in the ice, a kind but determined expression etched on his features. But when she blinked, it was gone, leaving her to wonder if it had been just another hallucination born of her ordeal. Shaking off the feeling, Eleanor began the long trek back to civilization, the weight of cosmic secrets heavy on her shoulders. The hollow earth lay silent once more, its eldritch inhabitants contained behind strengthened barriers. The old ones slumbered fitfully, their dreams seeping into the collective unconscious of humanity, inspiring tales of cosmic horror and unknowable entities. And somewhere, in the spaces between realities, in the echoes of what might have been, the essence of Dr. Leonard Mason lingered, a watchful presence, forever guarding the boundaries between order and chaos, between sanity and madness, between the world of light and the terrifying depths of the hollow earth. As Eleanor Brandt emerged from the Antarctic wilderness, her harrowing tale of underground horrors and cosmic entities was met with skepticism and disbelief. Scientific institutions dismissed her claims as the ravings of a mind broken by isolation and extreme conditions. Her career in ruins, Eleanor found herself ostracized from the academic community she had once called home. But there were those who listened. In shadowy corners of government agencies and occult societies, Eleanor's warnings were heeded. Covert operations were launched to locate and seal other potential entrances to the hollow earth. A global network of monitors was established, ever vigilant for signs of eldritch energies or dimensional weakening. Eleanor herself became a reluctant guardian of forbidden knowledge. She traveled the world, collecting ancient texts and artifacts that hinted at the true nature of reality. In hidden libraries and secret vaults, she compiled a comprehensive guide to the cosmic horrors that lurked beyond the veil of human perception. Years passed, and Eleanor's obsession with the hollow earth never waned. She was haunted by nightmares of writhing tentacles and non-Euclidean geometries, of vast intelligences that regarded humanity with alien hunger. But more than that, she was haunted by a sense of absence, a feeling that someone vitally important was missing from her life, from the very fabric of reality itself. In her darkest moments, Eleanor would find herself staring at old expedition photos, her eyes drawn to a blank space where it felt like someone should be standing. She would wake from dreams of a man's voice, kind but determined, telling her to warn the world. But no matter how hard she tried, she could never bring his face into focus, never recall his name. As Eleanor aged, she became increasingly reclusive, dedicating her life to ensuring that the knowledge of the hollow earth and its cosmic prisoners would never be lost. She trained a select few disciples, passing on her wisdom and her warnings to a new generation of guardians. On her deathbed, surrounded by arcane tomes and eldritch artifacts, Eleanor Brandt had one final vision. She saw a vast crystalline structure pulsing with otherworldly energy. And there, reflected in its faceted surface, was the face of a man, a scientist, an explorer, a hero whose name had been erased from history. With her last breath, Eleanor whispered a name she had never known but had spent a lifetime trying to remember. Leonard. As her soul slipped away, Eleanor felt a profound sense of peace. Somewhere beyond the boundaries of conventional reality, she sensed a presence, watchful, protective, eternally vigilant. And she knew, with a certainty that transcended rational thought, that humanity would never truly be alone in its stand against the cosmic horrors of the hollow earth. In the years that followed Eleanor Brandt's death, her warnings and accumulated knowledge became the foundation for a secret global initiative. Governments and private organizations, setting aside their differences, worked together to monitor and defend against incursions from the hollow earth. Advanced sensors were developed to detect subtle fluctuations in reality. Specialized teams of scientists, soldiers, and psychics stood ready to respond to any sign of eldritch awakening. The work was dangerous, often deadly, but it was necessary to preserve the sanity and safety of an unknowing world. But despite their best efforts, the influence of the hollow earth could never be fully contained. Its echoes reverberated through the collective unconscious of humanity, manifesting in myriad ways. Artists and writers found themselves plagued by visions of cosmic horror, creating works that hinted at truths their conscious minds could not comprehend. Lovecraft, it seemed, had only scratched the surface of the terrors that lurked beyond the veil of reality. Physicists and mathematicians made groundbreaking discoveries in quantum mechanics and higher dimensional geometry, unknowingly brushing against the cosmic mathematics that underpinned the prison of the old ones. Psychics and mediums reported increasing incidents of contact with entities that defied description, their minds nearly shattered by the experience. Around the world, cults dedicated to the worship of eldritch entities began to emerge from the shadows, their members driven by dreams and whispers from the depths. As the 21st century progressed, the barriers between dimensions began to show signs of strain. Climate change and human activity weakened the physical structure of the Earth, creating new potential entry points to the hollow realm. Technological advancements in quantum computing and particle physics inadvertently probed at the cosmic locks that held the old ones at bay. The guardians of Eleanor Brandt's legacy worked tirelessly to prevent catastrophe, but they knew it was only a matter of time before the horrors of the hollow earth would once again threaten to break free. In secret facilities around the globe, teams of researchers pored over Eleanor's writings, searching for clues that might help reinforce the weakening barriers. They studied the accounts of the original expedition, trying to understand the nature of the sacrifice that had sealed the hollow earth decades ago. One young scientist, Dr. Amelia Chen, became particularly obsessed with the mysterious figure that appeared in Eleanor's final visions. She spent years analyzing photos, documents, and journal entries, convinced that this unknown man held the key to humanity's survival. As Amelia delved deeper into her research, she began to experience strange phenomena. Objects in her lab would move on their own, defying the laws of physics. She would catch glimpses of impossible geometries out of the corner of her eye, only to find nothing when she turned to look. And in her dreams she heard a voice, calm, reassuring, but tinged with cosmic sadness. "The veil thins," the voice would say. "The old ones stir. You must find a way to reinforce the barriers or all will be lost." Driven by these experiences, Amelia redoubled her efforts. She developed new theories about the nature of reality, pushing the boundaries of human understanding. Her work, building on Eleanor Brandt's legacy, began to attract attention, both from those who sought to protect the world and from those who would see it unmade. As Amelia's research progressed, strange events began to occur with increasing frequency around the world. In the depths of the Mariana Trench, oceanographers recorded sounds that defied analysis, vast, haunting calls that drove listeners to the brink of madness. Deep in the Amazon rainforest, an expedition vanished without a trace, leaving behind only a single journal filled with frantic sketches of impossible creatures and rambling equations. In Antarctica, long dormant volcanoes began to stir, their magma chambers resonating with unearthly frequencies that set seismographs around the world vibrating in sympathy. Across the globe, people reported mass-shared nightmares of vast, tentacled entities rising from the depths of the earth, their very presence warping the fabric of reality. As these events unfolded, Dr. Amelia Chen found herself at the center of a growing storm. Her research had attracted the attention of powerful forces, some who sought to use her knowledge to prevent catastrophe, others who saw in the coming chaos an opportunity for power beyond imagining. Late one night, as Amelia pored over her calculations in her dimly lit lab, she felt a sudden shift in the air around her. The shadows in the corners of the room deepened, seeming to pulse with an inner life. And there, reflected in the screen of her computer, she saw a face, the same face that had haunted Eleanor Brandt's final moments. "Who are you?" Amelia whispered, her heart pounding. The face smiled sadly, its features shimmering like a mirage. Was Dr. Leonard Mason," the apparition replied, its voice echoing as if from a great distance. "I led the expedition that first discovered the hollow earth, and I made the sacrifice necessary to seal it away." Amelia's mind reeled. She had seen this face in old photographs, always slightly out of focus, as if the camera itself was struggling to capture something that should not exist. "But why can I see you now?" "The barriers weaken," Mason's ghost replied. "The sacrifice that wrote me out of existence is losing its power. The old ones stir in their prison, and reality itself bends under their influence." As if in response to his words, the lab around them began to warp and twist. Amelia watched in horror as the walls melted away, revealing glimpses of impossible vistas, vast, alien cities that hurt the eye to behold, and beings of such cosmic scale that her mind threatened to shatter at the sight of them. "What can we do?" she asked, clinging to her sanity with desperate strength. Mason's form flickered, his expression grave. "The hollow earth must be sealed again, but the cost will be even greater this time. The old ones have grown stronger, feeding on the fears and dreams of humanity for decades. To contain them now will require a sacrifice not just of one life but of many." But Amelia understood then what she had to do. Her years of research, her intuitive leaps of logic that had puzzled and amazed her colleagues, they had all been leading to this moment. "I need to gather the other researchers, don't I? The ones who've been working on Eleanor Brandt's legacy. We need to form a human seal." Mason nodded, a look of deep sorrow and respect in his ethereal eyes. "Yes, but know this. If you succeed, you will all be erased from history just as I was. Your lives, your achievements, your very existence will be undone. The world will continue, never knowing the sacrifice made to save it." For a moment, Amelia hesitated. Everything she had worked for, every ambition and dream, all of it would be wiped away. But then she thought of the horrors she had glimpsed, the cosmic terror that threatened to engulf all of reality. Her resolve hardened. "I'll do it," she said firmly. "And I'll convince the others. Somehow I know they'll understand." Over the next frantic days, Amelia raced against time to gather her fellow researchers. Some came willingly, driven by the same nightmares and visions that had plagued Amelia. Others required convincing, but the escalating global phenomena, earthquakes, mass hallucinations, and tears in the very fabric of space-time, served as persuasive arguments. As the team assembled, the world around them began to unravel at an alarming rate. Cities sank into suddenly appearing abysses, while others found themselves transported to alien landscapes. The sky itself seemed to crack, revealing vistas of such cosmic horror that those who gazed upon them were driven instantly mad. Guided by the spectral presence of Dr. Mason, Amelia led her team to the place where it had all begun, the hidden entrance to the hollow earth in the Antarctic wilderness. The journey was perilous, reality itself shifting and changing around them as the old ones pushed against the weakening barriers. Finally, they stood before the ancient gateway, its surface writhing with eldritch symbols that burned themselves into the minds of all who looked upon them. Beyond the threshold, They could hear the maddening whispers of entities older than time itself, hungering for release. "Are you ready?" Amelia asked, looking at each of her companions in turn. They were a diverse group: scientists, mystics, soldiers, all brought together by a shared understanding of what needed to be done. One by one they nodded, their faces set with grim determination. They knew the cost, but they also knew the alternative was too horrifying to contemplate. As one, they stepped through the gateway, descending into the nightmare realm of the hollow earth. They fought their way through landscapes that defied description, past horrors that threatened to shred their sanity. Always, they were guided by the ghostly presence of Dr. Mason, his sacrifice echoing through time to aid them in their desperate mission. At last, they reached the heart of the hollow earth, the vast crystalline structure that served as the linchpin for all of reality. Its faceted surface pulsed with chaotic energy, reflecting the encroaching madness of the old ones. "Now," Mason's voice echoed in their minds. "Join together. Your combined will, your very essence must reinforce the cosmic locks. But remember, once this is done, there is no going back. You will be unmade, your existence erased from the timeline." Amelia looked at her companions one last time, seeing in their eyes the same mix of fear and resolve that she felt. Then, with a shared nod of understanding, they pressed their hands against the crystal's surface. Energy surged through them, every atom of their beings becoming conduits for forces beyond human comprehension. Amelia felt her consciousness expand, merging with those of her companions and reaching out across time and space. She saw the history of the universe unfold before her, the rise and fall of civilizations, the birth and death of stars. She witnessed the old ones in all their terrifying glory, and understood at last the true nature of the hollow earth and its role in the cosmic balance. As their combined essence rewrote the fundamental laws of reality, Amelia and her team made their final, heroic choice. With a thought that resonated across dimensions, they reinforced the barriers between worlds, sealing the old ones away once more. In their last moments of existence, they saw flashes of the world they were saving. Cities reforming, the cracks in reality sealing themselves. People awakening from shared nightmares, the memory of cosmic horrors already fading from their minds. The Antarctic wilderness peaceful and undisturbed, the entrance to the hollow earth hidden once more. And then, with a final surge of energy, Dr. Amelia Chen and her team were gone. Not dead, but erased. The timeline rewritten so that they had never been born, never uncovered the secrets of the hollow earth, never sacrificed themselves to save reality. The crystal pulsed one final time and then went dark. In the world above, life continued. The strange events of the past months became the stuff of urban legends and conspiracy theories, quickly forgotten by most. Scientists puzzled over unexplained seismic activity and atmospheric phenomena, but found no satisfactory answers. But deep beneath the Earth's surface, in the twisting corridors of the hollow earth, something had changed. The old ones slumbered once more, their prison reinforced by a sacrifice greater than any before. And in the spaces between realities, in the echoes of what might have been, new guardians joined the watchful presence of Dr. Leonard Mason, an eternal vigil, forever guarding the boundaries between order and chaos, between sanity and madness. The hollow earth lay silent once more, its eldritch inhabitants contained behind strengthened barriers. But the cost of this victory would never be known to those who benefited from it. The names of Dr. Amelia Chen and her team, like that of Dr. Leonard Mason before them, faded from existence, their lives, their achievements, their very being unwritten from the pages of history. Yet somehow in dreams and in the quiet moments between thoughts, humanity would sometimes feel a sense of profound gratitude, a fleeting awareness of a debt that could never be repaid, to heroes whose names would never be known. And in the depths of the hollow earth, in the crystalline heart of reality itself, a faint echo remained, a whisper of sacrifice, of courage, of the indomitable human spirit that had faced cosmic horror and emerged victorious. The old ones stirred fitfully in their renewed prison, their dreams once again seeping into the collective unconscious of humanity. They would inspire tales of cosmic horror, and unknowable entities, of brave explorers and terrible sacrifices. And perhaps, in some distant future, when the stars align and the barriers weaken once more, new heroes would rise to face the challenge, guided by the echoes of those who came before, forever standing guard in the spaces between worlds. For now the world was safe. The hollow earth slumbered, and the greatest sacrifice in human history remained unknown, unremembered, but eternally honored in the very fabric of reality itself.